Welcome back to another episode of Talk to My Agent Live. I'm your host, Max Lowenthal, Director of Agent Product here at Decagon. Very excited for our first live show with two fantastic guests. I'll introduce you both. First we have Julia. Julia, the co-founder of Eventbrite and CEO, of course, from 2016 through March of this year. I imagine most folks familiar with Eventbrite, but if not, of course, the company has sold over 2 billion tickets across 180 countries, IPO'd in the New York Stock Exchange, survived the COVID pandemic, which we will definitely get into today, and then last December acquired by Bending Spoons. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Also, sitting next to her, we have Ashwin Sreenivas. Ashwin, someone I'm personally very familiar with, co-founder and president of Decagon. Decagon, 3 years into building one of AI's fastest growing companies, now valued at $4.5 billion, and powering the customer experience for hundreds of different organizations, including Eventbrite, which we will also spend some time talking about today. Ashwin, also for those of you who don't know, is a close friend of Julia's. So we definitely have an interesting conversation. It'll be fun to be a fly on the wall between the two of you. Ashwin, thanks for jumping in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So for today's conversation, want to talk a little bit about the journey that both of you have been on, right? You're two founders who are at different places in their company building arcs, but honestly have a lot more in common, I think, than folks may necessarily realize. And so want to spend some time today talking about the differences across your adjacent businesses, how the world of company building looks today versus maybe how it did in 2006 and some of the earlier days. And a lot of the work that you, I know, personally identified with, the culture building of obviously building out companies. So I think we've got a lot to dig into, but maybe let's start with the company building journey. I think that's super interesting. I know you spent 20 years building out Eventbrite. So we're in this moment right now where companies are growing as fast as possible, as I've ever seen them. And they're also burning out faster than I think they've ever have. So, in your perspective, you did something very different, right? You guys built one company over a very long period of time today. And a lot of founders that I think we're seeing today kind of exit or pivot well before that. Maybe a good place to start, and then Ashwin, we'll turn it over to you for some thoughts as well. What was it about Eventbrite that really made it clear to you that this was a 20-year journey? What made you want to stay? Was it conviction, momentum, something else? Tell me what drove you through the journey.
To be completely honest, I had no idea it would be a 20-year journey.
Yeah.
I was not a serial entrepreneur. I wasn't even an intended entrepreneur.
Sure.
I mean, I didn't grow up as the kid with the lemonade stand. I was a ballerina. I was ambitious, but I was really good at taking direction and, making adjustments and figuring out how to please people. That was my superpower. And, I met Kevin in 2003 at a wedding, and that kind of set my whole life off on another trajectory, which
Sure.
I have to say, and I think this theme will come up a lot because it's related to Ashwin, he has that effect on people. And I had no idea at the age of 23 that I would have this whole incredible journey because of him. I think what I've learned is that there are certain people who have this insatiable need to expand the world through their ideas, and that don't have a chip that says in their brain that says this may not work out. They're eternally optimistic, and that typically is somewhat of a rough sketch of a serial entrepreneur, which is Kevin.
Yeah.
I am someone who really thrives on the operational detail and rhythm and culture and community of a company, and so that's where he kind of found his match in me. Both from a life perspective and a professional perspective. I think about a lot because 20 years is a long time. That's sort of an era. It's more than a chapter. I think about a lot what advice I would give people today. And it's hard because I think that the longevity and lifespan of something is really hard to imagine when you're in the day-to-day firefighting. And especially today when you're in this sort of hyper-growth, kind of chaotic environment where it's almost like an arms race. It's a GPU arms race. It's a certainly capital arms race. It's, a lot of hype. And I think at the end of the day, the people who build sustaining, enduring, people-changing companies are thinking about more than just models and memory. I think they're thinking about, the moments that matter in people's lives and how they can be a part of that for the long haul. And I'm really proud of what we built with Eventbrite, because while it's not the biggest business from, certainly I wasn't like super stoked about the exit.
Sure.
It means a lot to the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's in great hands to outlive us. I really do.
Yeah. Going back to
Why don't I have an iPad, by the way? I just want to set the record straight. I was not offered an iPad.
We can trade off.
But I'm cool, okay.
Talking about the early days at Eventbrite on the 20-year journey, I'm curious about two things. One, when you decided to start Eventbrite, how much of it was Kevin convincing you to, hey, like let's go build a company together, and starting out, it wasn't like a lot of companies today where it's like, oh, you start doing something and, the next day you're at 100 million in revenue. You walked into the 2008 crisis. So walk us through a little bit of like kind of both of those kind of pretty formative things in the early years.
Yeah, and we'll get to this, but I think you are one of the few people, probably one of a dozen people who really understands the power or the Tao of Kevin, because you are an entrepreneur that he really believes in, and a founder that he's just been, relentlessly supporting.
And for everybody's context here, I think both. If you had a line of, Silicon Valley founders and companies that like Julia and Kevin have been instrumental in like basically creating and building and like shaping big courses of their lives, this line would stretch down the block.
I don't relate to that at all. I'm like I'm like to the side watching it, but I can say that, and we will get back to the question, I can say that there's been, again, a very small number of entrepreneurs who have shown up at our house consistently, and it's like, and they're all really successful, which is amazing. I think that like the hit rate, or there's like natural selection thing. But I knew when I met you that you would be really successful at, whatever you built. But like it's an interesting thing, because I haven't yet put my finger on exactly what makes those connections stick, but I was one of those people that Kevin found. It's a weird thing. It's like, obviously we met, under the auspices of a personal thing, and fell in love. But like, I have experienced the same type of unbelievable support that helped me understand what my true capacity and potential could be. And so I was in television, to answer your question, developing shows like Jackass.
Right.
Yeah, you're welcome. And literally, I was the intern at MTV when the Jackass guys sent in their demo. And so I just had this incredibly fortunate experience to be on that wave, and it was insane. And lots of stories there. But then I was at FX working on Nip Tuck, The Shield, Rescue Me, this really great content, and met Kevin, and we fell in love. And we were LA, San Francisco, long distance, and I would come up and go to early PayPal parties at Peter Thiel's apartment, and then just to put it in a place and time, and then he would come down and go to the MTV Movie Awards, and we had this like crazy kind of juxtaposition, on either side of the coast, or up and down the coast, and so when it came time for us to figure out where we got engaged, and we had to figure out kind of where we were gonna be based. I found a job working on a startup cable network in San Francisco called Current TV, and it was Al Gore and Joel Hyatt who were starting this like user-generated news network, and I was like, I could do this. And Kevin, I got this offer that was terribly low. I'll never forget. I was making $80,000.
Sure.
And that was a big deal. And I got an offer for $50,000. Sure. And I was like, that's not very exciting. And Kevin was like, okay, two things. Like I sort of hesitated. He was like, two quick things. One is this is never going to take off because let me show you this thing that my friend Javid's been building, and it was YouTube. And he's like, and two, you're worth way more than that, and you shouldn't go work on someone else's project and like make no money. We could just start something and you could make literally no money, and we could put all of our savings towards bootstrapping it, and it could be terrible and we could lose all of our money, but it would be really fun.
A lot more fun.
I just like totally blacked out at the point at which I said yes.
Sure.
So I'm not exactly 20 something years later, I'm like, did I say yes? Like, was it really a yes, or was it like a, I'll think about it. Next thing I know, I'm moving out of a window, this beautiful window office on the 42nd floor of Fox Plaza in Century City, which is Nakatomi Plaza in Die Hard. And I'm moving into a windowless phone closet not far from here in Potrero Hill, like with this guy who I'm like, oh no, what if he's crazy? Like, what if he's actually crazy? And it turns out, definitely crazy.
Yeah, quite, quite the cowboy.
A great kind of crazy, like a really great kind of crazy. And I remember opening my laptop on literally a plywood and sawhorse desk, being like, what did I just do? And in the first week of working on Eventbrite, I realized like, I solved the mystery of why I hated school, which was that I hated to be told what to do and I hated to sit there and listen, but I loved to learn by doing. And I went to public school. You don't get like a lot of chances to learn by doing. And so I just fell in love with it in the first week, but I had no idea what we were doing at all.
And, what was it like, you started a little bit and then the financial crisis hit.
Yeah.
At what point did you sit there and think, oh, yep, we tried, this is a terrible time, let's try again in 5 years from now? Or were you like, you know what, let's push through this? Like, what was that period like, especially given the company was so young?
Prior to Eventbrite, he had founded Xoom, XOOM, which was international money remittance. So helping immigrants send money back to their families better, faster, and cheaper than Western Union. The reason why I explain that is because it was in the post 9/11 era, and you couldn't actually become a money transfer agent unless you had millions and millions and millions of dollars in your bank. It was just like these crazy hurdles, and Kevin was crazy enough to like jump over them and raise all this capital from Sequoia to do it. So he did not want to do that again. When we started Eventbrite, he was like, I think we should bootstrap the company with our own money. And so we spent our own money, less than $250,000 in 2 years, on building and getting to really PMF for Eventbrite. And then we decided to go out and raise money, and it was in the fall of 2008. And we had 27 meetings with venture firms, and we got 27 no's. And I remember feeling so dejected about this outcome. And Kevin was kind of, every time there's like a rejection, he like turns it around in this magical way. He kept leaving our 2009 plan with everyone. And I'm like, dude, like we're facing the end of the world. How do we know that we're gonna make our 2009 plan? He's like, well, if we do, it'll be really impressive, So I'm like, okay. So we retrench, we raise some money from family and friends, literally are like giving us money to keep Eventbrite going. And one of our theses around that time was that Eventbrite, if it were built right and the product was easy enough to use, would allow people to turn their passions into profit, that they could like use Eventbrite to teach other people skills and, to network and whatnot. And that's exactly what happened in 2009. We had the best year. I literally think like 2009 and maybe 2012 were like our best years ever. And we went out in Q4 of 2009 to the same set of probably like a subset of the 27.
Sure.
And we received multiple term sheets because no one in 2009 had met their plan. Everybody was just totally falling apart and like either shutting down or rebasing or like, worse. And we kind of stood out. And so we had our pick of offers, and we went again with Sequoia Capital, which was the best decision we made. It was a pretty obvious decision. it wasn't the best term sheet, but from there, once you got the Sequoia stamp of approval in 2009, like you were a company that other people wanted to put money into. At that point, it became, let's not raise too much money.
Yeah. Now, not to jump from crisis to crisis, but
why not?
About 15 years later, or 12 years later, you're now a large public company at the time, and COVID hits, and your business is centered around in-person human experiences, and that basically just goes to in-person human experiences effectively end on one specific day.
Yeah.
What was that first week after that like?
Well, I would only correct Ashwin one thing. You said large public company. We were a tiny public company, but we are the second largest trafficked event site in the world. So we are by an order of magnitude the largest self-service ticketing platform in the world. But in the public markets, we're very small. We had the amazing benefit of three things. One was we are good friends with the head of the infectious disease department at UCSF. And this guy, Joe DeRisi, is just like a total renegade. And we had gotten to know him a couple years prior. And so we had information straight from the source of someone who wouldn't be overhyping it or underhyping it. He's in the know. We had amazing wisdom around us to say, act fast and be on the front leading edge of treating this like a real crisis. And then the third thing we had was each other. I mean, I remember coming home in the first week. I mean, this was that Black Swan event for Airbnb and Eventbrite alike. It was very distinct. And those are our biggest, at the time, our biggest holdings personally. So that was fun. And I was on the board of the Four Seasons and UCSF. I mean, we were surrounded by just absolute, disaster. We just treated it very seriously, which created unfortunately a very unintended rift between us and our customers, because we were having to call these festival producers or these venue owners to tell them to stop paying their suppliers. Right. And that we were going to stop paying them because these events that we were advancing them their ticket sales for were not going to happen, and they were going to need to round trip the money anyways. It was a very, very uncomfortable first week because quite literally we were on the phone with people who were irate with us, who thought we were insane and evil, tech lord and crazy people wearing tinfoil hats. That was early March. The most romantic thing that Kevin has ever done for me was that I shut the office down. We were at 5th and Brand at the time. We had 50,000 square feet, 500 people. And I was the last person out of the office. And I remember shutting the lights off, being okay, I'm sure I'll see this place again. And then I never did. But I came home and our whole home office had been turned into a war room with these gaming monitors in this 360-degree formation with two chairs in the middle. Kevin was no longer the CEO. I had taken over as CEO, and he had moved on to start new companies and start A-Star, but he just dropped everything for me, and that was quite literally. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's the most romantic thing he's ever done, but for me it was, because I felt like I didn't have to be alone. So for those first 30 days, we were side by side just saving the company. And just to give you perspective on how bad it was, we had, Eventbrite was 14 years old at that point, and in 14 days we had no company. We were producing more refunds and revenue for the events that were not going to happen, so we were in negative revenue territory, which meant all of our Tableau dashboards broke, and we had zero visibility into the business. And we were basically we threw away our roadmap, and we were just building things that would help our creators stay in business, because think about the importance of live venues, just one subcategory that exists on Eventbrite, and how important it is that live venues survived COVID. And so many of them, even in San Francisco, are still struggling to come back. Thankfully, the mayor understands that and is starting to create some regenerative strength in San Francisco to support that. But it's like, this was exactly what we were trying to do, which was support them without taking the whole ship down. It was intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's actually talk a little bit about that because, Eventbrite, excluding the COVID years, was very focused on human experiences. You're also on the board of the Four Seasons, which has a big part of it centered around human experiences, in-person experiences. What is your view on, as AI experiences and AI customer experiences come forward, what do you think will forever remain special and kind of cordoned off to human experiences?
I'll use tonight as an example. We all will never be in the same place together at the same time, just us doing the same exact thing. We'll never be in this beautiful place on this beautiful day, talking about the things that we've been talking about and experiencing this moment ever again. And there's absolutely nothing else in our life that is that ephemeral. So when you think about the premium qualities of being human and of being together, live experiences and gatherings are at the very tippy top of that because you can't replicate it. Even, I went to the Eras Tour 4 times because I have 4 daughters. Like every single experience was unique. It was out of this world in terms of energy. It was phenomenal, but it was different because you never literally will ever replicate that. But that was a pretty formulaic experience. So I think real life experiences, and particularly, not just your day-to-day sort of, happenstance run-ins, but just curated moments together are the only way to create indelible memories. And prior to this year, I would sort of try to describe it as think about the last thing you read or watched or listened to that really changed your life in the last week. And then think about your first concert. And the difference between those two things where for me, I don't know, maybe it was reading about some I went real dark today. I was reading about the Sudanese war. Things in retirement have gotten weird, but that maybe stuck with me. But I can tell you exactly what Janet Jackson sounded like, what the arena smelled like, how hot or cold it was, what I did before and after, how it felt in Vancouver in 1999. And I just think that there's an undeniable quality, and obviously I'm biased, but I've seen it firsthand about experiences that are not going to go away.
Do you think even as technology advances and AI can do more and more things, there's a category of experiences where you say, even if you could, this shouldn't be based on technology or virtual, this should always remain in person?
Well, I have a pretty simple premise, which I think is not surprising, which is that technology enables experiences to be better. And we existed through the rise of social. So we built Eventbrite based on the idea that we wanted all events to be discoverable in organic search. And that was the top driver of traffic. Sounds so simple now, but each event page was user-generated content, and we wanted to just make that was my one contribution. We wanted to make that sort of tailwind for them. And then we started to see Facebook pop up as one of the top 10 traffic drivers to Eventbrite, and this is back in 2008. So we took that to Facebook and we said, they were I don't know, 1,000 people maybe. We're this is happening. We want to figure out why. And we figured out that people were copying their event details and reposting it in Facebook and then linking back to Eventbrite to sell tickets. And so they gave us the first events API key. We built that into like a really fruitful one button push integration where you could actually buy the tickets on Facebook and it would be powered by Eventbrite. Like the social, I can't tell you how many times somebody, probably a public market investor, said that Facebook would come kill Eventbrite. Or mobile, like, all the ways in which we needed to rethink the experience, and then all the ways that mobile enabled a seamless check-in. Now you can take your phone and just check people in and scan the barcodes that they're showing you from their phone, and everything's great, RFID, et cetera, et cetera. Big data, AI, or virtual reality, and now AI. I think that like the technology will continue to be a tailwind for live experiences. It hasn't yet proven to be, even on its best day, a replacement for the feeling you get. And I am staunchly in the camp that you can't replace the indelible memory making with virtual reality. But I do think AI is going to make event creation so much richer and better and more accessible.
Yeah, no, actually, on that point, Eventbrite was a Decagon customer, right? What?
Still is.
It still is, actually.
It Eventbrite is alive, and we're still a customer.
Eventbrite is still, in fact, Eventbrite just renewed for another couple of years, I believe.
I am no longer running Eventbrite, so I'm the only part of this that
this
doesn't.
is true.
So yeah.
What, when you originally made the decision, what part of, putting, at the time, was a relatively novel thing, what part of putting AI in front of your customers, in this case for, customer experience, customer support, was something that surprised you? What was, why did you decide to do it at the time that you did?
Well, Eventbrite's an interesting beast because it serves the long tail. So we have quite literally hundreds of thousands of creators who are creating millions of events for tens to hundreds of millions of attendees. And it's this interesting marketplace where we don't produce the good, and we also are somewhat of a platform to the supply side. So in that, a lot of confusion happens when there's a problem. And what I really wanted to do was I wanted to inject intelligence into the layer where there's a level of high anxiety. Event planner actually ranks as one of the top 5 highest anxiety producing professions you could choose. So there's that, and that's a lot, right? And I wanted to think about ways that we could show up and be there just in the nick of time for people. Hopefully we'd get better and better and anticipate their needs. But once you're calling Eventbrite, the shit has hit the proverbial and literal fan, and you're not in a good place. And I wanted to try to get 5 steps before that. The other thing I wanted to do was actually give help to the ticket buyers, because for years we'd sit in this really weird, awkward place where we don't know where the parking is. We don't know if you can bring kids. We don't know why, the line was so long. So we're a terrible source for someone who just needs to either vent or ask questions or get. And why that mattered was not so much to deflect, it was to anticipate the social anxiety that people have when they go to events, especially off the charts post-COVID. It was just COVID really, can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
COVID really fucked us up, real bad. And I honestly don't think that we've fully understood how much, and we won't for decades. But it really, really, really created this sense of, I'm not sure I want to go out because it's so high stakes, and I don't know that I want to put myself in that position. But then it awakened this beast of social anxiety that had been kind of laying dormant because it was uncool to be socially anxious. So I had all these ulterior motives to really introducing AI in the journey of our customers. And I mean, I had such a hard wall to climb to get this going. internally. And then there was like this awesome extra added bonus where like I've watched you build several businesses and I knew you were like one of the most relentless people I'd ever met. So, you know, you don't get that benefit from like when you sign up with somebody and you're like, but I was like, no, I mean, this is the thing that we want to be doing with them.
Yeah.
Let me interject here, because Ashwin, I think you're building a company answering this question at scale like hundreds and hundreds of times over. So from your perspective, I guess I would ask you the same question. The conversations that you're having with the businesses that we're talking to, you know, how are you advising people on when is the right time to bring AI in the journey and how they should be thinking about that too?
Yeah. I mean, roughly when I have a lot of these conversations with folks, it's about creating net better experiences for their consumers that they couldn't do before for one of several reasons, right? Either it is because as a business, their economics don't allow them to have a whole host of people that can provide these kinds of services. Or number two, you know, the thing that AI is very good at is ingesting a vast amount of data and say, hey, this person needs help right now. Let me go be proactive, right? Like you said, before the shit hits the fan, how can I anticipate that 5 steps ahead and intervene so that that user or that customer doesn't have that bad experience? The other thing that, you know, it's also good at doing is remembering everything about them, right? So that, you know, if you had someone that was an event attendee and they were saying, hey, I'm going to this concert, it can remember, you know, this is an event for kids. By the way, I know you have 2 kids and I know one of them's under 5. Don't worry, this event is like, you know, is friendly for kids under 5 without them having to, you know, show up at the event venue and then be told, oh, sorry, this doesn't work for you. Yeah. So this ability to be proactive, to personalize is ultimately what we want all our customers to get out of working with us.
Well, and event tickets are actually one of the highest risk purchases because they're not often cancelable or refundable, and they're worth something one day and nothing the next, right? So there is this like pressure cooker, high stakes decision making that happens with consumers for event ticketing, which kind of leads them to be master procrastinators on making that purchase.
Yeah, I want to zoom out a little bit and go back to company building. You talked about how in the very early days you were very intentional about saying, hey, we're going to bootstrap, we're not going to go the venture route and raise a whole bunch of money. If you look at most companies today, it's in fact the exact opposite, right? It's like, oh, I want to raise $100 million for my seed round, and that's the absolute minimum I start with. What are your thoughts on this change? Like, do you think it's for the better? You think there are things that companies today are missing because of the approach to raising and spending money?
I think it's a terrible thing. I really do. I think it's a terrible thing, and I think I don't envy founders today who have to go out and raise a bunch of money because they need to buy the compute or they need to, you know, they're in a capital arms race. Because for several different reasons, and I hate this because I do know that I sound like a curmudgeon. But like, you know, there's so many human experiences that you can liken to just a few different principles. One is you don't know what you've got till it's gone, which I do think collectively during COVID for people who lived in areas of the world where like the world came to a slight end and then rebuilt itself. I do think like that very much impacted our business for the better. People really valued being together. But I think when the assumption is that, you know, when quite literally money's falling from the trees, there's no way for you to imagine a world where something like a COVID happens and takes out the whole basis of your business. Like you just don't get that. You don't get that experience. Yeah. Not to keep coming back to you, but you have actually started and scaled companies that didn't make it. So you know exactly what it feels like. Yeah. And those are the types of founders that you want to get behind because you definitely want to know that somebody's seen some shit. Yeah. And I just feel like, I mean, not even the capital, but also the like time of life that people are starting companies. Like I get to be a fly on the wall in our kitchen listening to, thankfully, Kevin has to work from home because they're between offices. So I get to like hear it all. And I mean, going to college is sort of like this funny thing that you do just to drop out. It
Yeah,
feels like,
yeah.
right? So it's like, you're not only are you like not seeing that through, but then you're like dropping out and then getting all this money. And it's like, we can't be confused when things don't go so well. Like just by virtue of like it being quite literally, you're handing a lot of cash to a, not a fully formed frontal lobe. Like, that's like, okay. But then also, I feel like it also injects different opinions and maybe contradictory ownership principles to the mix, because nobody's just giving money away for free. And so they expect certain returns, they expect certain access, they expect certain respect. And I think that does really end up complicating matters. And then the third thing is just that I don't know that the best ideas are getting the most amount of money. It's like you really want to go, like I hate to say this, but like I really want to go through a tide recession for a minute, because that really tells you who's got the pants on to like get the job done. And that inevitably is going to happen. But this whole like hype cycle where you start to like anticipate that more than actually think about the like fundamental principles of building good businesses. I don't know. It's strange. I mean, it's weird to be old enough to know what it was like when capital wasn't available.
What's your take there, Ashwin? I'm curious as well, right? Obviously, Decagon, 3-year business. You've gone through this, as we're talking about, as part of this hype cycle. When you're thinking about fundraising and otherwise, like, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah. My take is, for the first several years of the company, we were always cash up. So after we raised the seed, we had to raise the seed to, get off the ground. But when we raised the Series A, we had more cash in the bank than we'd raised in the seed. When we raised the Series B, we had more cash in the bank than the seed and the A combined, and the same for the Series C. Our kind of, my kind of general approach to capital is, when you really need it, when there are downturns, you want to have cash in the bank that you can rely on. You want the war chest for the times when you want to really aggressively invest in an opportunity. Just because you raise a lot of money doesn't mean you have to spend it. It gives you a certain amount of flexibility. You just have to then be extremely disciplined to not spend it. And I think having gone through periods when things didn't work out for a long time, I think it, at least for me personally, it makes me much less likely to spend it, because I'm like, yep, I've seen the times when you really need cash and it's not easy to get. So,
well, and I also think it's like I used to chart, our revenue per employee and against our capital raises, because again, once Sequoia invested like, $9 million or something, like money started for us falling from the trees. So it was like Henriella Mogan wanted to invest, Lee Fixel wanted to invest. Not only were we getting these amazing people, but big sums of money. And it's like revenue per employee kept just tracking, would dip down every time we'd raise money. It is like a fact of the matter that the more money you raise, spending becomes a rounding error.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think you have to be penny wise, pound foolish, but I think every great operator, and again, founder who has seen the other side of this, like what it feels like for things to not work out, has a like break in the case of emergency red button, where it's not just like a vague, we would stop spending in marketing or something like approach to, if the world is ending tomorrow, what would you do? It's a very detailed plan that this operator is ready to put in action at any given moment, literally. And I think great boards are starting to really understand the fake plans from the real plans. And there's really no reason to talk about impending doom or a down cycle unless you're using it to get ready, right? And make yourself stronger. And I don't think those are just like fruitless activities. I think they're really important thought exercises, but they should be ready to be put into practice at any given time.
Well, something that's interesting is that you're actually both hitting on the same point from different angles, right? Which is this mindset of like a scarcity mindset, right? Like how can we make sure that we are ready to go in the case of that? You're talking about, both of you, a lot in learning from an experience, right? People who have gone through these, I would say, like ups and downs through these journeys, who have that mindset. Do you both feel like it's possible to have that mindset today? Do you have to go through those downs and ups, or is there a way for someone, a founder in 2026, to be deliberately planning? If I'm a new founder, I'm listening to this, right? I don't want a recession. I don't want a downswing to have to learn that lesson. How are you guys thinking about advising other people to be more deliberate?
I think it's about listening to and seeking to understand. And I'll give you a real life example. When COVID hit, and it was that first week, so early March, Kevin and I, this might not go so well, but I'm gonna tell you honestly what I felt like. I felt like a Make-A-Wish kid, because I could call anyone and everybody picked up the phone because they were like, oh shit, life experiences. Like, oh God, how are you doing? And I'm sorry if that offends anyone, but that's just what I felt like.
Tumultuous times.
It was, and so I would call, and Kevin would call everyone. I mean, I swear, I think he was on the phone with Warren Buffett at one point. I'm like, This is amazing. And we are just soaking in all this incredible wisdom. Yeah. And I'll never forget one particular conversation, which was with a guy named Bob Mylod, who was, at the time of 9/11, Bob was the CFO of what became, it was Priceline back then, or one of the travel platforms.
Sure.
And he was like, on our call, he's like, well, buckle up, kid, because you're about to be processing more refunds than revenue. And I'm like, okay, Bob. And that was definitely, it was day 5.
Sure.
And on day 14 that happened,
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that, because he told me exactly what was going to happen. So when it happened, I was like, oh, wow, Bob said this was going to happen. And I just think, was I better off because he said that? Marginally, but was I much better off by listening to his wisdom and then keep going back to that well and asking more questions, Absolutely. Because even though it had been 2001 and now we were in 2020,
the shape of the problem.
Same shape of the problem, same principles applied. So I just kept calling him back and be like, okay, now I've got this. What would you do, for instance? And I think that actually, so you don't have to be old and you don't have to have seen really terrible things.
Sure.
I'm gonna now I'm gonna get kicked off the pod for being too overly I think that Ashwin and Jesse represent founders who are kind of that perfect sweet spot. Yeah. They're not old and curmudgeoning, but they've also seen some stuff really early. And that, I think, is probably the benefit of so many young people building and trying things that are inevitably, not all of them are going to work. Yeah. But those failures make you a much better operator and thinker. And so, but you can not fake it, but you can, absorb the wisdom if you know who to call and how to ask questions and how to actually listen.
Right. It's more about the learning than the failure.
And it's being humble enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. Can you tell me more? Which I think I've learned from Kevin.
I think the part that sometimes a lot of people at Decagon might not like is, this morning I actually got up during all hands and I'm like, I had a whole slide on fiscal responsibility. And I'm like, and this is why we're going to cut a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's I just sat through a talk like that from a friend and I was like, gosh, it doesn't matter the business or the time or the place. That message is always going to be woven in to the best companies, right? That are, no matter what, no matter how incredible this growth has been, how incredible the product is, how incredible the team is, you are not going to win unless you're also doing something really hard, which is constantly thinking about how you can be excellent without overspending.
Yeah. I will be taking this specific clip and playing it at the next all hands. So when people are upset about snacks,
profitable growth.
When people are upset about there not being good snacks, I'll be like, look, it's not me. There's all kinds of people.
We talk about when we sold the company, the day we announced it, I sat in a room with my general counsel, and we just started going back and forth, just killing each other with memories of good times and bad times, mostly bad times. It was really just unique to be able to be like, oh, remember that? No, I'm gonna one up you. Remember that? And I mean, by the end, we were dying hysterically, laughing and crying. But the one that was brought up in that room was Snackgate, which was this happened right before COVID. We were in this, I had built quite literally my own personal Taj Mahal of like our culture personified in a physical space. And this was like our 8th office. So, I just like, this was the one that I built from the ground up. It was everything. It was just so open and vibrant and, like so Eventbrite, and it had the best snacks, and we were just like humming along. And then I got the snack budgets, like the actual. And I was like, I can't, first of all, I can't go home and like have this knowledge and not fix it, living with who I live with. Second of all, I can't sleep because this is just not okay. And it became very clear that like we were sort of supplying people's food for like many parts of their life, not just the parts that they were, and not to, there wasn't bad people. It was just like had gotten out of hand. So I had our GC announce a snack change that almost ended the company. Like anyone involved understood how insane the reaction was, how visceral and emotional the reaction was to the snack change. But we got through it, and then like a month later, COVID hit, and then there were no snacks
The calculus changed
at all, and we never went back to an office. So
different set of problems
because of the snap.
Culture is a good point. So culture was something that you personally at Eventbrite spent a ton of time on, and like you spent a ton of time thinking about this, and you were very intentional about it. What does culture mean to you, and how does someone even be intentional about it?
Well, I think the most important story I can tell about culture is when I decided to focus on it, which was so personally, I had just turned 30, I think, and we had a kid, our first daughter, and we had Eventbrite, and we had raised money from Sequoia, and I was like, had this nebulous title of president, and I didn't really know what that meant. Kevin was CEO. We were 3 of us, co-founders. I'm like, what is this title?
Sure.
Could I just be the intern? I'm not sure what's happening. And so I had this existential crisis, and I had a very clear vision that Sequoia was going to be like, yo, like it's been great, but like, do you want to like exit side right, like stage right? Because like, what value are you giving or creating? And then at the same time, a bunch of our vintage, like 2006 vintage companies were like, the ones who had survived had gone through hypergrowth, and they were really messed up. Like their cultures had gone totally sideways. They like the wheels were falling off the bus. They had to like reset, CEO changes, all this crazy stuff. And I remember thinking, God, it's so weird. I think it's going to be inevitable for us that we like go through this. We were going to triple our headcount that year with the money that we had raised. And then I also had the wisdom of knowing that I felt for Eventbrite the same way I felt for the human baby we had made. Like it was like this unconditional love and total enduring loyalty. And I thought like, wow, if I put those two things together, like there's this impending doom, and I would like quite literally lift the train off the tracks for this company. What could I do with that? And so I came to Renaud and Kevin, who are our co-founders, my co-founders, and I said, I think I want to, like, I don't know what this job is, and certainly it's not HR, because Lord knows I'm not, qualified. But I want to like come to the table of every major decision we make as we're scaling and put the Brightlings first. I want to like be the person who like thinks about it from the Brightlings perspective and like weighs in on that. And I want to really work on hiring, and I want to spend all my time on how we recruit and then what we do with that. And they're like, great, like go for it, like go. So in the first 5 minutes of that newfound role, I realized that like culture most certainly was not going to come from me, and it's not. I detest any sort of idea that it did. It really is the amalgamation of the people at the company at any given time. And so throughout the years, I ended up being able to help create a killer culture. Like we ruled on that front for sure. But it wasn't the best culture, it wasn't the coolest culture, it wasn't the most fun culture, it was the most sustainable culture. And I think that's why I'm very proud of it. And people would ask along the way, how did you preserve the culture when you grew, or how did you preserve the culture when you had to go to remote during COVID or whatever? And I would always say, like, well, that's not the right question, because culture's not a bug preserved in ember, right? It's actually like a living, breathing amoeba that should actually like grow and change. And if things suck, it shouldn't feel super happy and like oddly cheerful at your company. You know, it should be like, we would do the like dreaded culture amp surveys, and the numbers would be low, and everybody would be so sad.
We just completed one of those at Decagon.
Yeah, everybody would be sad, and you're going to like, it's 4.65, but if you take this group out, is it, you know, it's like, actually, I would just be happy that everybody said how they felt. Like, I didn't care what the number was, because if things sucked, then yeah, like we would be sad, and that would be right. And so it was like, okay, I never revealed that fact to anybody before, that I didn't care about the score. I just cared that people were actually, you know, participating. And we had insanely high participation, because I think everybody felt this sense of ownership around our culture. And I think that's what makes a culture great, is if people actually do feel like, yeah, we're the great part and we're the problem.
When did your culture face the biggest stress test?
I mean, working remotely killed our company faster than COVID did. And the company's not dead, so that's good. But it really, really tested our ability to grow, innovate, change. I just think that's the thing that I would have, and I know that's like so whatever, I don't even know if it's like a thorny subject anymore, but like, it just did. Like I was really sure that I didn't want to make any proclamations about how we would work too early, because I kept watching all these like founders be like, we've got the answer. And then it was like, the minute they said it, they were like, yeah, we're not actually doing that. You know, I just felt like it was like way too chaotic. But being a smallish company spread out around the world without like pockets of talent that were working together, that was a grave miscalculation and error that once I figured out it was the wrong thing, it was like very difficult to undo.
Knowing that you had to go remote, do you think there could have been, with the benefit of hindsight, something you could have done, or do you think it was just inevitable by the fact that?
Well, I think we could have done something. What happened was we got caught in the whitewash of 2021. Like, we were not a COVID darling. We were on the other side. So we were trying to get people to come join a company that was focused on in-person experiences. And because I wasn't going the way of virtual events, and eschewing that, we were we were supporting virtual events. Like, virtual events was like 80% of our business for 6 months. Then everything came back in person. We were competing against a lot of companies, and I got convinced, and I saw it for a while, that we could get great talent if we went to where the talent was, and if we relaxed the rules on where the talent had to be. And I don't disagree with that, but I think what happened was we became so diffused and fragmented that it was really difficult to come together in any significant way without a huge amount of expense. And then we weren't in a position to underwrite all of that. So that was just it was probably one of my biggest operational fails in running the company, was not like getting ahead of that and being convinced that it could work and not realizing how wrong that was.
If we can go back to the point you were at before, right? So there are a lot of businesses that are naturally in person now. Maybe they're in earlier days than you were. What were sort of like the concrete, like tactical ways that you were intentional about setting and building out the culture? Was it how you diffuse it to your leadership team? Were there actions? Were you leading by example? Were you writing it down? Like, if I'm someone who's trying to say, like, you built this in a fantastic way. How can I emulate you, right? What were really the tactics and techniques there?
Okay, because I was about to go down a dark hole of all the things that I've done wrong, which we can spend hours
sure.
on. But the one thing I did right was I always stuck to my guns that, and okay, like people didn't listen to me, so it happened anyways. But I believed that you should not like spend a ton of time writing down your values, because the minute your stencil's like done, it's become a meme.
Sure.
And it's like, why? Like, oh God, I just think that's such a time suck. And if that's what you guys are doing, I would love to come in and talk to everybody, because I think it's this weird thing where our values, original values, were just pilfered off of our brand values, because we were building the product that the product was then like providing this value to our customers, and the way our customers described us was our values. Like it was just like part of a virtuous cycle.
Sure.
And then through the years, I had people come in who were like, we need to do a values exercise. We need to do the culture book. We need to do the thing. And I'm like, no, I don't want to spend any time on that, because all you have to do is work here for a week to understand what the values are. And so why was that so important? It was because walking the walk is the most important thing that you can do, but especially when people aren't watching. It's just like what your parents teach you to do. And this is something that I think, not to wax too poetic about him, but like Kevin does in such a way that's so authentic. He is the most true north in his personal compass that like I've ever seen of anyone. And sometimes it's annoying to us and the rest of the people that live in our house, which is like, you don't have to tell everybody everything, like this isn't, like we have zero secrets, to the point where it's like, you don't do something that you would keep a secret in our house, because it ain't going to be a secret. Like it's just going to be out there. But he also is just like always doing the right thing. And so that was something that he taught me, and I just kept doing that. And so at Eventbrite, and of course you're going to find people who are like, no, I don't feel like that was the truth because of their lived experience. And I understand that, but I know that we always did the right thing when we were given two options, and one was like kind of not the right thing. Yeah. Maybe the faster path. Like we always chose the right. Like the most valuable question I asked in any given meeting was, what's the right thing? Like, and we would just do that. Yeah. And like I think that was the most important thing about building a culture that sustained itself, because people weren't wondering if you were saying one thing or stenciling something on the wall and doing another. Yeah. And so I think that was the most important thing. The worst thing I did was allow the stencils or like the book to be made and all that time to be wasted on values that became just memes that weren't like embedded in anything serious. And then the hiring thing, like letting Eventbrite become this sort of diffuse, lightly connected organization was terrible for people's morale and for productivity. Yeah,
because I don't want to end on that.
You want to go positive?
A 20-year, over the 20-year journey. What was your favorite memory? Or what was your favorite?
Well, first of all, I'll wrap the culture thing up in a bow and say that we had our 20th anniversary party. So Kevin and I are celebrating our 20th Eventbrite anniversary and our 20th wedding anniversary in the same year. And we had our 20th in January for Eventbrite. And it felt like we did a talent show, because that's what we used to do every year. And it was like SNL 50. Like we brought back the most talented people and like the most untalented people. And it was this massive rager at a venue in San Francisco that actually is kitty corner to where we started the company. And it's an Eventbrite venue. And it was like attending the celebration of my life before I die. Like it was quite literally one of the best feelings I've ever had. And the reason why is because we built a community of people who really cared for one another. And that's the thing that I'm most proud of, is that if you worked at Eventbrite, you would definitively say that people cared for you in a way that's like not typical.
Sure.
So my story that we should end on is actually, so we just saw Ron Conway yesterday, and Ron Conway is this prolific angel investor, and he was an angel in Eventbrite, like many other companies and all of Kevin's companies. And he befriended Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas. And they were together yesterday and they're still great friends. And in 2011, we were called by Ron Conway. He's like, Julia, Kevin, I got Will here. Will.i.am, Black Eyed Peas. He wants to do a benefit for the Robin Hood Foundation in Central Park. They want to do a free concert for 60,000 people. He wants to do something new. You've got to do it. And we're like, what?
Hey, good to hear from you.
What? It's going to be a lottery. So like millions of people are going to hit the site trying to get tickets. It's going to be, they haven't done a free concert in the park since Diana Ross when there was a riot. And now there's the Diana Ross playground in Central Park. Like this is for like 30 years or something. I'm like, this is a terrible idea. And Kevin's like, we're doing this. Cut to, it's the middle of summer in New York. I am now 6 months pregnant with Maeve, and I'm very unhappy. We are in Central Park. We are setting up for this concert. We are literally jerry-rigging this like ingress system that would scan people as they walked through. We had no product to speak of for that kind of event.
Sure.
We're sitting on Central Park West in a trailer, and one of our engineers, Bob, is also a pilot. And so he's got his iPad out, and he's like looking very concerned at the iPad. And I'm like, Bob, it's a gajillion degrees and like 80% humidity. And I'm like, Bob, what's going on? He's like, we got a storm system heading our way. It's like really bad, like an electric storm system. And I'm like, okay, and this is the era of Black Eyed Peas where they were like electronica, like lots of metal on the stage. And I was like, so what happens if that happens? He's like, I don't know, we should find out. So I'm like, it's like an episode of Parks and Rec. I'm like out there with the Central Park people, like what happens if you have to cancel the event? They're like, well, only the mayor can do that. I'm like, okay, cool. And we like both are looking out the window of this trailer, and it's like the State Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters marching down Central Park West, this cloud that's coming. And so cut to, it's like we are scanning people in. People have been waiting around the block all day to get in. People are passing out. It's like crazy. We get 7,000 people in, and it is a gale storm at this point, like just insane. Things are falling. It's crazy. And we get over the radio, concert's been canceled. You have to get everyone out. I'm like wondering why there was this Diana Ross issue. And now I'm like realizing same thing happened for that concert 30 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, we're all wearing these bright orange Eventbrite shirts, like total targets, I'm like with child. And we're like, oh God, so we have to get everyone out. We get everyone out, it's mayhem. We all decide to meet at like a diner a few blocks away. We're sitting there and people are crying, like we're so dejected. And Kevin walks in with this huge smile on his face. And I'm like, what are you happy about? And he's like, it only took us 8 minutes to get 7,000 people in. Imagine what we're gonna do when we do this again. Like, this is awesome. And I was like, oh my God. And at that moment, it really reinforced in me, like, the amazing power of that eternal optimism when you're building something new and something terrible happens. Because we did end up doing it again. I was not there because at that point I was like obscenely pregnant, and it was a great success. But had we not put ourselves out there, had we not totally taken this risk, and then had we not thought about the upside, we definitely wouldn't have done it again. And I just think that's the kind of spirit that brings companies from an idea to a business to a company to a legend.
Well said.
Yeah. Knowing everything that you know now, looking back over the 20 years, the good parts, the bad parts, the terrible, painful parts, knowing all of that, would you do it again?
Oh, in a heartbeat. I mean, I would do it again with Kevin.
Yeah.
and I think the way that translates, it's not because he's my life partner. I would do it again because once you have someone who's seen a lot and wants to just keep going, you are truly limitless. And so I think the important thing is to find great partners or great teams that just keep going no matter what. You know, that I think is like, that's such a special experience, and we should all be so lucky to have it.
Yeah.
Julia, Ashwin, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Julia.
Thank you.